many of us, finance can feel like, well, an exclusive club, right?
Definitely. Like a dense language.
Exactly. But imagine if it's a language you, our listeners, can actually learn and master, no matter your background.
That's what this deep dive is really about. Demystifying finance.
Yeah, and exploring how, our own human behavior shapes our financial lives.
And we'll even peek into the future a bit. AI and financial guidance. It's coming.
We're going to unpack all this using insights from a financial economist whose work, frankly, has reached millions. Someone who's really good at making complex stuff clear.
Right. Our goal here is to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge from these sources. Give you a shortcut, sort of.
To being truly well-informed about money markets.
And even yourself, really. How you tick when it comes to finances.
Get ready to connect some dots, maybe rethink a few things. Let's jump in.
Okay.
So a core idea that really comes through is that finance, it's like a universal language.
One everyone can learn and maybe should learn.
The expert makes a strong case. He points out that virtually everything at some point or another ends up being about money.
Yeah, especially if you're thinking about starting a business or just, your career path.
And not speaking this language.
Yeah.
Well, it leaves you at a pretty big disadvantage, he suggests.
It really does. Finance isn't just for Wall Street types. It underpins so many daily decisions.
Right.
Not getting the basics is like trying to play a game without knowing the rules. You're not just inefficient.
You're vulnerable.
Exactly. Vulnerable. My own interest actually started pretty young. I remember hearing my mother discussing financial challenges.
Oh.
It made me what the source calls hyper-aware, that finance is just a necessary part of life.
And crucial to avoid being, taken advantage of.
Precisely. That early experience definitely stuck with me.
You can see how that early exposure, seeing the real-world impact, shaped your conviction. And it clearly fueled this passion for making the knowledge accessible. Your work with OpenCourseWare, for example.
Oh, absolutely. The chance to reach people globally, regardless of cost or access, that's a huge honor.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe everybody should have access to this knowledge. It's a great equalizer, really.
So let's bring it down to earth. For everyday life, what are some of those fundamental financial concepts, the ones that can genuinely empower someone?
Okay, one really key concept is just recognizing trade-offs. In every single decision, every purchase.
Trade-offs, okay.
We often tend to compartmentalize our budgets in our heads, right? Money for this, money for that.
It's separate buckets.
Exactly. Without really seeing it all comes from one big pool of resources. Thinking more broadly about how you allocate all your resources, that can lead to much better outcomes.
It's a practical insight right there. So instead of just thinking, okay, I have $50 for dinner tonight,
Right.
You think, what's the most valuable thing I can do with this $50 right now, considering all my goals?
Precisely. That's the shift in thinking. And then there's the idea of moving money through time.
Moving money through time. Explain that.
Well, think about borrowing. For a house or a car, what are you doing?
You're getting money now.
Right. You're moving money from the future, our futures, to our present.
Okay, makes sense.
And the flip side is saving. For your kid's college, maybe, or that future car.
Right.
That's moving money from today to ourselves 2 years from now or 3 years from now, or even further.
So what's the takeaway for you, the listener? It sounds like understanding these things, trade-offs,
Yeah.
it's ultimately all about control, isn't it?
That's exactly it. Control. Using finance as a tool to get what you want instead of, letting it control you.
Right. Not being intimidated by it.
Yeah. Using it proactively.
Okay, let's shift gears. A big question probably on a lot of minds. AI. Specifically, retirement planning. Should you just fire up ChatGPT right now and ask it to plan your retirement?
Okay, my immediate answer.
Not yet. Okay, walk us through why not. What are the limitations right now?
Well, the large language models, LLMs, they're just not yet ready to be able to do delegated financial decision-making. That's the key phrase.
Delegated decision-making.
Right. And there's a really important difference between saving for retirement, which many people are actually pretty good at, and spending money in retirement. That's the tricky part. Spending at the right rate for the right things at the right times.
Over potentially decades.
Exactly. That requires a level of nuance, understanding, and frankly, trust that AI just isn't quite there with yet.
That's a critical distinction.
Yeah.
You also mentioned something vital, fiduciary duty. What does that mean for someone seeking advice?
A fiduciary is an advisor who is legally bound to act solely in your best interests.
Above their own interests.
Above and beyond their own, exactly. It's a standard regulator's demand, and it's why trust is just paramount. You're handing over your financial future, in a way.
Right.
We're actually working on an AI advisor that aims to meet that standard, especially for people who maybe can't afford a traditional human advisor.
Interesting. So if direct delegation is out for now, how can we use these LLMs, like ChatGPT, to help with our financial future today?
Oh, you absolutely can use them, just not for the final decision. Use them to help you think through retirement issues more seriously.
Okay, like how?
You could ask about, say, the biggest issues you should be thinking about for retirement, or how much time do you really have?
Getting a lay of the land.
Exactly. Ask about ideas, products, and services that might be relevant, or even just how to get better financial information, where to learn more.
So exploration and information gathering, not direct advice.
That's the sweet spot right now. They're great tools for that.
But we all know AI isn't perfect. You mentioned potential for garbage or hallucination problems. With something as critical as finance, how do we navigate that?
Yeah, that's crucial. You need human support, always. Talk to friends, family you trust, maybe your bank or credit union.
Don't rely solely on the AI.
Never. The key is get a second opinion, get a third opinion. Mix the AI insights with human wisdom, because ultimately, you are going to be responsible for your own decisions. But being well-informed from multiple angles, that really helps.
You make such a powerful point about how decisions made early on, they can have these tremendous consequences 30, 40 years from now.
It's like teenage health habits impacting you in middle age. The comparison is very apt.
It really drives home the importance of starting early, even with small steps.
Absolutely. The financial habits you form in your 20s, your 30s, they compound. They really shape your future reality in ways that are hard to fully grasp in the moment.
And it's fascinating how that connects to something else you mentioned, the cultural taboo around talking about money.
Oh, it's very real.
Many of us find it awkward, even with close family or partners.
We do. And if you don't feel comfortable talking about your financial goals, your fears, your constraints with the people closest to you, well, who do you talk to?
Right.
And that's where a trusted advisor, human or potentially, down the line, a fiduciary AI, can provide that safe, objective space to share your deepest secrets, your financial goals, your constraints.
That makes sense. But with any powerful tool like AI, there are dangers, right? You touched on ethical concerns.
Yes. Any great tool can easily be abused. That's the worry.
Like asking AI to figure out shady ways to make money.
Well, yeah. Or promoting biased advice, or even facilitating illicit activities. These are tricky ethical questions developers and regulators absolutely have to grapple with proactively.
And then there's the speed, the breakneck pace of AI development. You noted the concern, it could displace workers very quickly.
Yeah, that's possibly the one concern that AI researchers are thinking about most intensely right now. Could it lead to large parts of our population unemployed faster than we can adapt?
Creating a massive retraining challenge.
A huge one. Historically, tech shifts were slower, gave society time to adjust. This feels different. And trying to slow down the rate of progress, that's incredibly difficult, maybe impossible.
It really highlights the intersection of technology and, well, us, human behavior.
Yeah.
And the expert makes a pretty blunt observation about us humans and money.
He does.
He says, it's amazing how bad we are as Homo sapiens in managing our finances.
It is, unfortunately, a humbling truth sometimes. We often act against our own best interests, even when we know better.
The human element screws up the perfect models.
It's often the ultimate confound, yes.
The pandemic was a perfect example, wasn't it? Stock market drops 30% in, days. Lots of people panicked, pulled their money out.
And completely missed the rebound just weeks later. If they just, done nothing, maybe gone on vacation,
their portfolio would have likely recovered. Crazy.
It's a classic case of emotional reaction, just overwhelming rational thought. Fear takes over, leads to totally counterproductive moves.
It really shows how human behavior overwhelms the rationality that old-school financial models assume.
Exactly. Which brings us to those two big ideas. The efficient market hypothesis and the adaptive markets hypothesis.
Right. Can you break those down for us? Why are they both kind of important?
Okay, so the efficient market hypothesis, EMH, it's a very popular theory, basically says markets always and everywhere reflect all available information.
Meaning prices are generally Correct.
Pretty much, yeah. It suggests prices quickly incorporate all known info, so it's really hard to consistently beat the market. And look, it works most of the time. It's a useful baseline.
But it is not complete.
Right. It doesn't fully explain those moments of panic or, irrational exuberance we just talked about.
Like the pandemic sell-off.
Exactly. That's where the adaptive markets hypothesis, the expert's own theory, comes in.
Yeah.
It's more about how the mechanics of human behavior interacts with the beautiful logic of financial markets. It brings biology and psychology into it.
So it acknowledges that sometimes our humanness, our emotions, our evolution does overwhelm pure rationality.
Precisely. It looks at how we adapt sometimes poorly to a changing financial environment. It gives a more complete picture, I think.
Okay, so given that we humans are human, prone to these biases and emotions,
yeah,
what can you actually do about it? How do you counteract your own irrational tendencies with money?
Well, the very first step, maybe the most important, is just to recognize that this is an issue.
Self-awareness.
Exactly. Just acknowledging, okay, I might panic or I might get greedy. That's huge.
And then what? You mentioned something about using our magnificent gift of human evolution.
Yeah.
Abstract thought.
Mm-hmm. That ability to think hypothetically, to run what-ifs.
How does that apply to finance?
You perform these what-if scenarios in your head before things go wrong. Ask yourself, okay, what if the stock market crashes by 20% next month?
Right.
What would I do? What are my options? What's my plan? Thinking it through calmly now.
Instead of reacting in the heat of the moment?
Exactly. Financial planners can help with this, running sophisticated what-ifs. Even AI might help here eventually. The point is being forewarned so you're forearmed.
Plan your response ahead of time.
Right. Reduces the chance of that panic selling, for example.
Now, this next part is, well, it's genuinely surprising. It's about the expert's own personal journey. He reveals he actually struggled immensely with math as a kid. He had dyscalculia.
The mathematical equivalent of dyslexia, as he puts it.
Which is just, wow. For someone who became a financial economist, math was his worst subject.
It's true. It was a constant uphill battle for me personally.
So how on earth did you go from that struggle to where you are now? Was there a specific turning point?
There were a few, actually. A really profound one was my third grade teacher, Mrs. Barbara Ficalora.
Okay.
She noticed my curiosity even though I was bombing math tests. And instead of just drilling me on numbers, she made me the class scientist.
Wow.
Let me do experiments, explore things. It massively boosted my confidence, showed me I could learn just maybe differently.
That's incredible insight from a teacher.
Foundational. Then later in the 70s came new math, which ironically was seen as a widely renowned failure in many New York schools.
Right, I've heard of that.
For me, it was night and day. It replaced rote memorization with equations, concepts, logic. It suddenly felt like taking off shoes that are 2 sizes too small.
The concepts clicked, even if the arithmetic was hard.
Exactly. It shifted from calculation to reasoning, which worked for my brain.
It's fascinating how a system that failed for many actually unlocked your way of thinking. Really shows how diverse intelligence is.
It absolutely does. And I had amazing teachers later on, too. Henrietta Mason, Saul Levmore, Sharon Oster, Herb Scarf, Andy Abel, Jerry Hausman. They all changed my life.
And these experiences clearly shape how you teach now.
Completely. I always try to step into the student's role, ask myself, how can I explain this so students cannot possibly misunderstand?
That sounds like an incredibly high bar.
It is, like aiming for a perfect landing for a gymnast every time, but it's so rewarding. And that's why OpenCourseWare feels like the great equalizer to me, reaching all kinds of learners.
You also shared a really telling story about a college friend. Innumerate, you said,
But incredibly well-informed, articulate, and extraordinarily analytical. Brilliant guy. Became a lawyer.
And that experience kind of shattered your previous assumptions about intelligence, right?
Yeah.
That it was all STEM.
Totally. It shattered my belief that intelligence is identified with STEM. He was someone incredibly sharp, but his intelligence was language-based, logic-based, not number-based.
Which broadens the whole definition.
Massively.
And you draw a direct line from that experience to large language models, like ChatGPT.
Yes. It struck me that LLMs represent a very different kind of artificial intelligence. They're analytical through language, not just numbers.
You're kind of mirroring your friend's intelligence.
Exactly, which makes me wonder, how should we really measure intelligence? In humans? In machines?
Are we undervaluing certain types of thinking?
I think it reveals whole swaths of society that we have somehow neglected and underappreciated because their strengths weren't easily measured by traditional tests.
That's a powerful thought. Now let's talk about a major shift in your career. Initially, your work was more traditional finance, applying math models to investments, risk management.
Yes, very much focused on making finance itself better, more efficient within the industry.
But something significant happened, a personal tragedy that changed your trajectory.
It did, profoundly. 6 close friend and family members, including my mother, Julia Yellow, died of cancer within just 7 years.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's devastating.
It was. And through that awful experience, I discovered a really shocking truth.
That's right.
That there are many examples of good drugs that could help lots of patients that will never, ever see it to market because there was not enough financing. The science was there, the money wasn't.
Wow. So the bottleneck wasn't the science, it was the funding model.
Often, yes. And that just, it hit me hard.
So what started as this very personal desire to help your own loved ones, it morphed into something bigger.
It transformed into this realization of the power of finance and the responsibility that we have to use these tools for high societal impact kinds of pursuits.
From a more, as you put it, selfish motivation to a broader sense of responsibility.
Exactly. It became clear that financial expertise, applied thoughtfully, ethically, it could be this incredible force for positive change, addressing critical bottlenecks like getting life-saving drugs funded.
And that focus now goes beyond cancer, right? You're looking at climate change, energy.
Yes. Applying the same thinking to challenges like climate change, energy transition, other massive issues that are just crying out for new business models and financing strategies.
These problems seem so huge, almost intractable sometimes.
They are huge, but finance, through innovation, can actually accelerate solutions by making them economically viable, attractive for investment.
Take energy, for example. You pointed out 82% fossil fuels still. We're not moving fast enough.
Nowhere near fast enough.
You talk about energy addition, not just transition. What's the difference?
Energy addition means focusing on bringing entirely new, clean sources online at scale alongside what we have, not just slowly replacing fossil fuels, which isn't happening fast enough anyway.
What kind of sources?
I focus on 3 big potentials: advanced nuclear fission, nuclear fusion, the holy grail, and deep geothermal. Game changers if we can unlock them.
And finance's role is?
Finance can hasten the political will. How? By showing there's a good rate of return possible on investing in these critical technologies now, making it smart business, not just good policy.
Your ultimate belief seems to be that if capital were just allocated in the most efficient way,
we could get better outcomes for everybody. Nobody has to lose.
That's a really powerful, optimistic vision. Finance is a win-win engine.
It's optimistic, yes, but I genuinely believe it's achievable. Finance doesn't have to be zero-sum. Directing capital wisely towards high-impact solutions can create universal benefits.
And finally, you brought something personal today, a meaningful memento that kind of ties this all together.
Yes, a picture of my mother, Julia Yellow.
Tell us about her. What does she represent in this journey?
She was everything. A single parent who sacrificed her career. She was a lawyer by training, came from China, escaped the communist revolution, survived a messy divorce from an abusive husband,
Wow.
all to raise 3 kids on her own. Her constant struggles with making ends meet, that shaped me profoundly.
That early awareness of financial reality again.
Deeply. But more than that, she instilled a love of learning and the importance of hard work and focusing on the longer game. She's truly the foundation for my drive, my work, my hope to make finance a force for good.
So, wrapping this up, what does this deep dive really mean for you, our listener? We've gone from finance as a language anyone can learn
to the nuanced role of AI. It's a tool. Use it wisely.
To understanding our own quirks, our human behavior around money.
Right, acknowledging those biases.
And finally, seeing through this expert's journey how finance can be channeled towards tackling huge societal problems.
It really shows you have the power, the insights now, to understand and manage your own finances better. Knowing both the tools and the pitfalls, especially the ones inside ourselves.
It's also a testament, isn't it, to how finance, often seen as cold or analytical,
can actually be this incredibly powerful lever for addressing humanity's biggest challenges: disease, climate change.
Exactly. Which leaves us with a final thought. If we can reshape how we think about intelligence, maybe value different kinds of smarts.
And leverage these powerful new technologies like AI ethically.
What other huge, seemingly impossible societal goals might we suddenly find we can finance and achieve? Think about it. What ideas do you have? What problems do you care about most? Could they benefit from a whole new financial model?